Anaks, welcome. Let's get to it. Starting first with the basketball questions. What are your thoughts on the current format of how players enter the NBA? Specifically, we would like to hear your thoughts on the draft and its eligibility, as well as the format of the G League currently. Would you change it at all? How and why? Just to let you know, this question is not asking anything particularly about the draft lottery and tanking. That'll be another discussion for another day. Mr. Rama, since you won the coin toss, we shall hear your response first.
Peter, I'd like to say I am absolutely first and foremost grateful to share the stage with you today and discuss these topics. Regarding the question, NBA. Currently right now, you have to be 19 years old or have played one full year at the collegiate level. It is a rule that has been changed over the course of the history of the NBA. However, I don't like it. The current rule as it stands, I hate it actually. And I'm not someone to use the word hate frequently, but I dislike it. I hate it. I think that any player who a team deems ready for the NBA should be able to get drafted. I mean, you look back at some of these players that have phenomenally impressed their with their entire body of their career, but have come straight out of high school, with the likes of Dwight Howard, Kevin Garnett, the late great Kobe Bryant. I mean, this is just Tracy McGrady. I can go on and on. I will not mention Kwame Brown, even though I just did, but he is someone that I personally should have probably not addressed, but shout out Kwame Brown for one of the outliers. I will say though, it's so much fun. And I remember it being so much fun watching these players, 17, 18-year-old boys come into the league and where a team will, put all their chips out to draft that player. I think that with that rule in place, being 19 or playing a year in college, I think that it takes a little bit of the fun and the rawness out of seeing some of these players come out of high school. I failed to mention LeBron James just right now. So LeBron James, you look at that, and within this last era, those are probably the four best players out of this era. And so I mentioned
Thank you
them.
for your response, Mr. Rama. Mr. Mato, will move to you on your response to this question.
I'm not done, and I'm not finished. But I will wrap it up just out of respect for you, Peter, and for your side. But I will say that this rule is complete BS. We want to make sure that the players that are drafted, if a team is willing to draft them, to be drafted. We see all of these young talents on YouTube, and they're fun to watch, and then they go to college, and an injury happens here, an injury happens there, and then they just skyrocket, fall off the face of the earth. Average G League salary, I'll bring in G League just for a moment, if I may, Peter, if I may. G League salary for the course of a 5-month season is, I would say, $35,000 for those 5 months. I mean, no one's going to opt out and just take the G League route unless there are a lot of changes made for that. And then if you look at, the overseas, there's just a lot of complications. And then I will bring in college basketball because I'm a big college basketball enthusiast as well as March Madness enthusiast. I will say that, yes, it will take away a little bit from the college experience, but the one and done has lessened that aspect as well as far as the enjoyment. If you look back at the last 10 Final Fours and the last 10 number one overall picks, only 2 of the 10 number one picks even made it to the Final Four. So they're not even playing in for the most part. So I will say that if you're good enough to make an NBA team or have an NBA team draft you, you should be able to go to the NBA regardless of age. Peter, I'm sorry I took a little bit more time, but yes, that is my stance, and I firmly stand by it.
Thank you for your response, Mr. Rama. Mr. Mato, will move to you on your response to this question. Again, I'm happy to share the stage with you, and glad you all viewers can join us on the stage. I think our views could not be any more different. I hear you on the rawness in terms of that. I think we understand the problem equally, but our solutions are just a little different. I think if you look at it currently, the one and done system, that's created a lot of problems for both the NBA and NCAA. A lot of players leave after 1 year, and even if they're just projected to be a second-round pick, they're leaving school early. And, of course, there are some good ones that the system works for. But generally, for the majority of these players, what happens is some get drafted and flame out after one contract, or a lot of them don't get drafted at all. And then they go to the G League or out of country league, European league, China league, whatever. Either way, a vast majority of these end up being a short career or no career in the NBA. In addition, when they're coming out so early, you like that they're raw and everything like that. I don't particularly like it. I think being 18 to 20 years old, your body and mind has not matured yet to where you're truly ready for the NBA rigors. Now, there are some players that are ready for it, but that is the exception and not the rule. As you mentioned, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, exception, not the rule. And so that's why you're seeing such a vast majority of them not make it. And this hurts both the NBA and the NCAA, because the NBA, they're getting a larger number of players who are coming into the league who aren't ready. You're getting a lot more Kwame Browns than you're getting Kobe Bryants. And for the NCAA, they're losing their players because they're losing players that haven't truly established themselves before they're mature and everything like that. So they're leaving. So both products are hurting. And my proposal is really to first make the G League stronger, as you did mention this. Thank you for your response, Mr. Mata. And my time is up, but since you took some of my time, I'll take some of mine back as well.
Fair enough.
My proposal is to make the G League stronger. And it's already been done. Each team has already a G League team for themselves, a minor league team. And essentially what I want to do is make the living wage a little bit larger than you said. It was 35. I think 50,000 is the right amount where they can make a living, protect their family and everything like that, take care of themselves while working on their craft. The example of this is the PGA Tour. Their minor league, people come into the tour ready to go, and while they're working on their skills in the minor leagues, they're able to make a living wage that can help themselves and help their family. And the way you do that is just taking a small percentage from the star players. I know that they're the reason why people watch the NBA and watch basketball, but I'm telling you, a small percentage of the money that they're getting paid, and they're getting paid a lot of money, then generally they're going to be able to pay for the funding of the G League players. And I think overall that would help the product of both the NBA and the NCAA, because I also want to change the ruling from a one and done to the baseball, where if you are a high school player and you want to get out, then you can. But if you're going to go to college, you're going to stay for 3 years. And that way you can have enough time to get a college degree and work on your craft. And if you are good enough, then you can leave for the NBA and make some money. I think either way, this is good for the product, for both the NBA and NCAA. And most importantly, it's good for the player. So that's my thoughts. Again, I think we have a similar understanding of the problem, but I don't agree that you should just let all these players come in all raw and ready to go. So that's just my thoughts. I'm interested to get into an open discussion with you on what do you think in terms of the pros and cons of essentially, like you said, you wanted it basically open, where after high school they can just jump into the league, all whatever. And mine is more of the baseball, where it's a little structured, where you can come in after high school, but if you're going to go to college, you better stay for 3 years. And it's worked well in the NFL. It's worked well in baseball. So I see no reason why we shouldn't institute that into the NBA. Thank you for your response, Mr. Mata. We will now open it up for discussion between the two of you. Mr. Rama, what is your rebuttal to Mr. Mata's response?
Great points. And you brought up some great points there, Peter. Some of them I agree with, some of them I disagree with. But yes, I think overall in the whole landscape of the NBA draft, which is only 60 players every draft, you get 30 up, 30 down in the second round. Out of those, it's not like you're seeing 20 of those guys come straight out of high school. There's a very small portion of those that are drafted that were available to get drafted out of high school at the time, get drafted out of high school. So we're looking at a very, very small group of players that have that necessarily raw talent for an NBA team to say, okay, I'm going to use my 10th pick on you. I'm going to use my first pick on you in the case of LeBron James. So I think, March Madness, or college basketball, NCAA as a whole, when you look at players staying the 3 years as the proposition that you mentioned, Peter, it's a great proposition. But at the same time, you get a guy that has a breakthrough first year in college, maybe one of the likes that, not necessarily was on an NBA radar going into the year, but he has that magnificent stretch of 1 year. Is he then going to just be forced to stay those next 2 years just due to the fact that, let's say, you have to just stay all 3 years, as you mentioned, Peter? Because that seems a little bit unfair as well. In a sport where basketball is, it really just takes 1 year, and teams will look at that resume and say, you know what, that's good enough. And that's why I think in general, it should be open. Everything should be open. I'm not saying teams should just draft, 17-year-olds like every pick they have, but I'm saying that
slippery slope you're going down if you're raised.
Slippery slope. Yeah, but I think, though, if a team wants to draft a player, there shouldn't be any boundaries when it comes to age. I mean, don't draft like a 12-year-old. Like, don't draft Bronny, you know what I mean? And, put him on an NBA team. I'm not saying that, but I will say, though, that I think the 3 year in this basketball setting is tough to do. It's tough to do with the nature of the sport and, just the talent and the gap between the talent. Because you got the cream at the top, and then you do got those gems that you find later in the second round or later in the draft. But I mean, if you get an opportunity to draft a Zion out of high school or a LaMelo Ball out of high school, I guarantee you teams are going to jump on that. And LaMelo had to go through all these hoops just to wait for his availability when he could have been on an NBA team already developing because of the talent that he already has. So interesting, though. Your points are very, very valid. I'm not discounting any of those points. I just think the 3 year, it can't translate as fluidly as opposed to baseball and football. I
hear you. And I understand those arguments against, say, a Zion Williamson, who, his market value is certainly high after just 1 year of college, and it's probably raised from high school to college. But I also point to the argument that if you look at the the old school stars, Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, David Robinson, and the list goes on and on, Charles Barkley, that they stayed at least 3 years. And look, they had a great NBA career following that, because if you also take a look at their injuries, I mean, Zion Williamson's already getting injured in his very first year. I'm a big Pelicans fan. I only got to see him 20 games this year. I mean, if you take a look at those guys' career, I mean, Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley are big guys. They rarely became injured, and I think that's a big problem that we're seeing with these young players coming in, is that their body isn't matured and their mind hasn't matured to handle those injuries and play through it, like the Michael Jordans and such, and Charles Barkley's, like I just mentioned. I do definitely see what your point is in terms of basically open it up willy-nilly, and that's fun. That is fun to see those young players develop in the NBA. But I think the benefits of going to college far outweigh than developing in the G League or any other league. That's just my opinion.
All right. I think the 2 minutes are up for the discussion portion. I know that we've been kind of going on, but definitely the points that you've brought up here, I acknowledge it. For sure. But it's at the end of the day, and I will stick by this point, it's a risk. It's a risk drafting anybody. 3 years in, 1 year in, 2 year in, 4 year in past cases when it was available, drafting a high school player, tremendous risk to that as well. And I think that makes it all the more intriguing. I know I'm all for, the health of the players, because I think when it's all said and done, the health is wealth. And in order for them to sustain a long career, I mean, it's all fundamentally on whether or not that player can stay healthy. And I do agree with you as far as we've seen the trend, more players that have stayed longer in college tend to already or have a longer career when it comes to less injuries. But I think that's just a testament to their bodies getting more grown. I mean, that's just age question. But if the Lakers want to draft Kobe Bryant, or they didn't draft Kobe Bryant, they traded for him. But in that situation, they took a shot on Kobe Bryant, out of high school. I mean, it can always be what if, but I think that the overall landscape of his career doesn't traject exactly the same. And it's just so fun to watch these high school players just come straight out. I know that's just me as a fan talking, not too much facts backing this. Is just for me, from a fan's perspective, I've enjoyed definitely when I got to see someone fresh out of high school, play against all of these grown men and see how they develop over the years. But yeah, Peter, that's the first question. I appreciate your stances though, for sure.
Same. We'll agree to disagree on this one.
Yes. And comment section below, please just voice out your opinion. If you agree, disagree with Peter's points, my points, whatever it may be. We want to hear your opinions on this as well. I mean, we're doing this debate not only because I'm interested in what Peter has to say, but I'm also interested in what you guys think as well, because these are such hot topics in the sports world. So, and these are topics that are pretty much going to be ongoing for the next few years unless drastic measures are taken. But yeah, first question, there we go, in the books, NBA and the eligibility